Ladies and gentlemen, gamers of all ages, my name's Jamie Johnson from Holy Grail Games, and today I'm here to present to you the rules for Museum, the board game. Museum is a game set during the golden age of Museum, where technology reached a point that the exploration of far-off lands and subsequent repatriation of historical relics became commonplace, and as it did, the public clamoured to hear tales of long-lost civilizations and lands. And in this game, you will be playing the curator of one of the world's greatest museums, tasked with assembling a collection of artifacts that history has never before seen. You'll be exploring the world, bringing back artifacts to display in your museum, which will earn you points, and at the end of the game you'll earn extra points based on those collections. However, the world will continue to turn as you play, and you'll have to face off against historical events and the scrutinising gaze of public opinion. So, will your museum go down in the annals of history, or will it be a simple footnote? There's only one way to find out. Let's see how it plays. To begin installing the game, you'll need the central board, the 4 continent decks with their public opinion cards, the headline cards, the notoriety cards, public opinion tokens, and prestige tokens. First of all, take each of the continent decks and shuffle into them 4 of their public opinion cards. Then, once that is done, draw 2 cards and place them on the slot indicated by that deck's icon. Should you draw a public opinion card during this phase, simply reshuffle it into the deck and draw 2 more cards. Place the decks near to the card slots for convenience. Next up, take the headline cards and place them on top of the journal, just here near the top of the board. For the notoriety cards, the same thing, shuffle the deck and place them on the little journal here. Public opinion tokens go here, and notoriety tokens go on top of the little diploma right here. Next up, we have the character board. Take the character board and put it near the central board. Then, shuffle the deck of character cards, place it on the left-handmost spot, and then draw 3 characters. Next up, each player takes one of the museum boards, unfolds it, and places it in front of them. Each museum has a corresponding coloured play marker which the player places on the 0 of the score track. After this, each player draws 1 card from each continent to form their starting hand. Should you draw a public opinion card, very simply shuffle it back into the deck and draw another card. Finally, each player draws 1 notoriety card to complete their starting hand of 5 cards. After this, each player receives 3 patron cards. They choose one, put it to the side of their board, and discard the other cards. That's it, you're ready to play. The first player is the last person to visit a museum. Good luck. In Museum, the turn is composed of 3 phases: the exploration phase, the action phase, and the end phase. During the exploration phase, a player takes any of the 8 cards available on the board into their hand, free of charge. Cards contain different sorts of information. They have a name, an image, some historical text, but they also have a value, which is used when playing and scoring cards. They have a civilization or a colour, which is used for scoring civilizations at the end of the game, and they have a domain or an icon, which is used for scoring domains at the end of the game. Once a player has drawn a card, their opponents may also draw a card. However, if they do this, they owe you a prestige point from the reserve. Once all the players have had a chance to draw a card, we move on to the action phase. During the action phase, players have a choice of 2 actions. They can place cards down, which is called furbishing your museum, or they can pick cards up, also called performing an inventory. When furbishing their museum, players will be purchasing cards to put into their galleries. To purchase a card, you simply have to discard from your hand cards of the same value. So for example, if I wanted to play Stonehenge with a value of 5, I could discard this Egyptian funeral mask with a value of 3, and this Roman armour with a value of 2 to pay for it. These cards are then placed into my discard pile next to my board. When purchasing cards, players can use multiple cards to pay for 1 card, or 1 card to pay for multiple cards, and you can play as many cards as you like during your turn, as long as you can pay for them. You can also pay for cards using notoriety points. For example, if I wanted to play this Incan mask, I could use the Japanese longswords, discard them, and also pay 1 notoriety point to reach its value of 5. When purchasing a card, you can use as many prestige points as you like, or only prestige points if you have enough. After purchasing a card, a player can place it anywhere they like within their museum. During the game, you can move your cards around as you see fit. However, at the end of the game, you will be required to rearrange your museum one final time, as that's where you'll be assembling your collections to score extra points. Discarded cards aren't lost. You can actually play them as if they were in your hand, though you can't use them to pay for anything. Additionally, however, any card in the discard pile can be purchased by any other player as if it were in their hand. In order to purchase a card from a player's discard pile, the buyer must first pay them 1 prestige point from their personal reserve. After this, they discard cards as normal to pay for the object. However, those cards are placed into the owner's discard pile and not the buyer's. Once the card has been acquired, it is placed into the buyer's museum as per usual. When purchasing cards from another player's discard pile, you may use prestige points to pay for that artifact. However, apart from the prestige point that you initially give to that player, any additional prestige points are not discarded but paid directly to that player who takes them for their personal reserve. Players can also hire characters to embellish the collections of their museum. To do so, choose a character from the personnel board and pay its cost exactly as if you were purchasing an object. You can then take that character, place it within your museum on the side in the little slot reserved for it, and then on the personnel board slide any other remaining cards to the right to fill up any gaps and draw a new card. That concludes the furbishing action. The second type of action you can perform is called performing an inventory, or taking cards back into your hand. As you may have guessed, it's very simple. You simply take all the cards from your discard pile and place them back into your hand. There is no maximum hand limit size. However, at the end of a player's turn, if you have more than 7 cards in your hand, object cards of course, then you must discard down to 7 cards. The cards you can discard are of course your choice. After having completed their action, but before passing play to the player on the left, the board is refilled. Draw a card from each continent deck to fill any holes from cards that were taken. If a public opinion card is drawn, leave the card in place, take one of the public opinion tokens and put it on that continent. The card is discarded when you next refill the board, however the token remains for the rest of the game. At the end of the game, this token can lose you points. Additionally, at the beginning of the first player's second turn and at the start of all their turns thereafter, a new event card is revealed. Event cards imply new state and rules to the game. For example, this card closes Africa, meaning we can no longer get artifacts from that continent until next turn. These cards affect every player and take precedent over any other rules of the game. Additionally, when a new card is revealed, it cancels out the old one. Finally, every time an event card is revealed, we also change up the personnel board. Discard the last character on the board, slide the other ones along, and draw a new one. Once this is done, play continues as normal. In Museum, players are competing to have the highest score by the end of the game. For each object placed into a player's museum, they score that object's value in points. For example, here I've played 2 objects with a value of 5, which scores me 10 points. Each time a player earns points, they move their score tracker around the board to indicate those points that they've scored. Additionally, cards with a prestige icon next to their value are masterpieces. When you play a masterpiece, you may take 1 prestige point. For every 10 points you score, you may draw a new notoriety card. These notoriety cards are exactly the same as the one that was given to you at the end of the game. Each one has a particular effect as described on the cards, and you may play this card at any time during your turn. You may have up to 3 in your hand at any point, but you may only play 1 of these per turn. Once a card has been played, place it into the discard pile next to the notoriety deck. The first player to reach 50 points signals the end of the game. That player finishes their turn, and then all other players have 1 final turn. Once these turns have been completed, each player has 1 more chance to rearrange their museum as they see fit in order to form the collections that will earn them bonus points during the final scoring. There are 3 types of collections in the game: civilizations, domain, and patron cards. Civilization collections, or colours, represent one of the 12 civilizations present in the game. They are composed of at least 3 cards of the same colour. For example, here we have a collection of 5 Egyptian cards, which if we look at the score sheet in the rulebook or on one of the gaming aids, would score you 5 points at the end of the game. Domain collections, represented by their icons, represent one of the 6 domains present in the game. Domain collections are composed of at least 3 cards with the same icon but different colours. For example, here we have 4 navigation cards, however 2 of them are the same colour. Therefore this would only count as a collection of 3 domain cards. If we look at the score sheet once again, we can see that 3 cards in a domain collection would score us 5 additional points. The final type of collection is the patron collection. These are slightly different as they are composed of multiple different types of collections of domains and civilizations from the rest of the game, and they are defined by the cards you chose at the beginning of the game. Each card will require you to assemble one or more collections and then award you points based on completion. For example, for the Incan Legacy, if I have at least 5 cards in my museum from the Incan civilization at the end of the game, I'll score 10 points. If I have at least 8 cards, I'll score 16 points, and if I have at least 11 cards, I'll score 28 points. It's exactly the same principle for this European patron card, except you'll be using cards from the entire European continent and not just from one civilization. Finally, this Conquest and Temples patron card requests that we assemble multiple collections and then awards us points based on the number of collections that we've assembled. In order to count as part of the same collection, object cards must be adjacent to one another. As long as this is respected, the collection may take any shape the player wishes, going around corners, whatever they please. On top of this, a card may be part of multiple collections, as shown here, as long as the card where the two collections intersect apply to both collections. Additionally, don't forget to add any character cards you may have recruited during the game to your collections for final scoring. Once all players have finished rearranging their museums into collections, we move on to the final scoring. First, score all the points for your civilization collections, then score all the points for your domain collections, and finally your patron cards. Additionally, you score 1 point for each prestige point you still have at the end of the game. On top of this, you'll notice a red zone within your museum. This is your high room. If you manage to fill up the high room with one unique collection, then you gain additional points as shown on your board. On top of this, if you manage to fill up your museum completely, you also gain bonus points, and if you manage to do both, which is very tricky but not impossible, you also gain extra points. Last but by no means least, we come to public opinion. These little tokens that have been accumulating on the board during the game, this is where they come back and bite you. So, first of all, take all the cards from your discard pile and take out any cards belonging to continents with at least one public opinion token on them. These will lose you 1 point per card per token on the continent. So for example here, I have 2 European cards, there's 1 token on the continent, these 2 cards will lose me a point each for a total of 2 cards. If there were 2 tokens, each of these cards would lose me 2 points for a total of 4 points, and this can get out of hand very quickly if you're not careful. As you're scoring, or sometimes losing, all of these points, feel free to keep moving your player marker around the score track to keep track of those points. Should you go past 100, simply add 100 to your score at the end of the game. The player with the highest score wins. Congratulations, your museum is the grandest in the land. Thank you very much for watching this rules video. I hope it has helped. I hope you now have a good idea of how to play the game. I wish you the best of luck with your museum. I hope you have a lot of fun with it, and I'll say thank you, and until next time, ciao.